Across the vast darkness of the galaxy, where stars shimmered like ancient spirits and planets spun in silence, there was one nightmare that echoed from system to system, whispered in 1,000 languages, feared by every living race. It was not a legend or myth. It was real, alive, and unstoppable. Its name was Veltrax. This creature did not belong to any known species, nor did it come from a charted world. It simply appeared one day on a border planet, tearing through its defenses, as if they were made of paper, leaving behind nothing but silence and ash. It was 20 feet tall, built like a living fortress, with skin like molten rock and muscles that flexed like thunderclouds. Its claws, each the size of a sword, could slice through reinforced steel. Its eyes, glowing a deep, unnatural red, were said to paralyze anything that looked into them. Veltrax did not attack for food or territory. It hunted because it could, because something deep inside it craved the chaos, the chase, the scream of its victims. It never spoke. It never roared. It simply arrived, destroyed, and vanished. Whole fleets had tried to stop it. Warships with weapons strong enough to break moons, armies with the best armor, alien mercenaries, plasma beasts and synthetic soldiers. But none lasted more than a few minutes. One by one, worlds began to fall. Trade routes were abandoned. Settlements fled inward toward safer systems. Entire civilizations moved into orbiting space stations, hoping Veltrax wouldn't reach them there. The Galactic Council declared it the highest threat ever recorded. A moving extinction, they called it. Some believed it was a god of destruction, sent to punish the universe. Others believed it was a failed experiment, a weapon turned wild. But no one knew the truth, and that only made the fear grow. Veltrax became the ghost in every child's story, the shadow behind every soldier's dream. Alien cultures that had never agreed on anything before now found unity in one cause: survival. Then, after years of horror and death, Veltrax changed direction. Scouts followed it, tracking its course through the stars. Its path was slow but clear, heading straight for Earth. Panic rippled across the galaxy. Earth was not like other planets. It was still rising in power, still young in interstellar politics, yet filled with strange courage and unknown technologies. Still, compared to the ancient empires Veltrax had already crushed, Earth was fragile, soft, almost innocent. The Council advised evacuation. Some wanted Earth to surrender immediately. Others offered to send fleets to help. But Earth refused to bow or run. Its leaders prepared quietly. Defense grids activated, satellites aligned. Every major city went underground. The planet held its breath. And then Veltrax arrived. It entered Earth's orbit without warning. No explosions, no lightning, just silence. The creature floated above the atmosphere, cloaked in shadows and dread. For hours it remained still, as if watching, listening, remembering. The world below waited for the first strike. Commanders tightened their grip on triggers. Civilians prayed. Scientists watched from their labs, recording every second. Then, something happened that stunned every observer. Veltrax descended, not toward a military base or city, but toward a quiet forest near the equator. It landed without breaking the earth, its massive feet gently touching the soil, claws folding back like resting knives. It looked around. Its red eyes dimmed. And then slowly, carefully, it turned away. No battle, no blood, no destruction. Veltrax walked. Step by step, the monster that had turned stars into graveyards left Earth unharmed. It entered the forest, vanished among the trees, and never looked back. It had come to kill, but it chose not to. The galaxy was speechless. Scientists didn't believe their data. Council members demanded answers. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Was Earth protected by something no one understood? Did Veltrax fear something on that blue planet? Or had the creature, known only for death, somehow found a reason to show mercy? Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. The deadliest predator in the galaxy had changed its behavior for the first time in history. And it had done so on Earth. That single act of silence, that single choice not to destroy, changed everything. And though Earth had survived without firing a single shot, its people were left with a strange, haunting question that no one could answer. Not yet. Why had Veltrax spared them? The story was only beginning. The days that followed Veltrax's quiet departure from Earth were filled with confusion, speculation, and an eerie sense of calm that no one trusted. News agencies across the galaxy broadcast the event endlessly, their headlines flashing in disbelief. Veltrax lands on Earth and leaves. No casualties reported. Monster walks away. Why did it spare them? On every screen, in every starport, across the massive ring cities and moon colonies, intelligent species of every kind paused to consider what had just happened. Veltrax, the unstoppable beast, the destroyer of 100 civilizations, had stood upon Earth's soil, stared into its forests and skies, and then turned away like a ghost with no appetite. The silence left behind was louder than any roar. Across the council worlds, scientists and military strategists scrambled to make sense of the event. Satellite data, energy scans, seismic readings, and atmospheric reports were gathered in desperation. Entire teams of analysts worked without rest, reviewing every frame of footage captured during the encounter. But the result was the same across every board. No sign of aggression, no psychic attack, no violent reaction. The creature had merely looked, then walked. The Galactic Council assembled in emergency session. Representatives from every major alliance, Trinzari Hive, Valkan, Empire, Saroon Triumvirate, and others, filled the chamber with unease and quiet fury. The Earth delegation, smaller and younger than the rest, sat still and watchful, offering no theories. Questions flew like sparks. Had humans developed some unknown defense mechanism? Was Veltrax injured, confused, or possibly tamed? Some accused Earth of secretly housing a weapon powerful enough to scare even Veltrax away. Others suspected a new form of mind control, perhaps hidden behind their primitive appearance. Still, others believed Earth's atmosphere held a chemical that the beast found poisonous or revolting. One theory even suggested Earth had made a pact with the predator, feeding it data or sacrifices in exchange for survival. Every theory was more ridiculous than the last, but no one could disprove them either. What made the situation more strange was the behavior of Earth itself. There were no broadcasts of celebration, no flags raised, no victory speeches. The planet had survived the most feared threat in the galaxy without firing a single weapon, yet its people remained quiet, as if uncertain they had truly survived at all. Meanwhile, among Earth's population, whispers filled every underground, shelter, and command room. Soldiers had waited for a fight that never came. Cities had hidden their children, their history, their hope, only to emerge and find nothing touched. There was confusion in every street. Scientists debated theories, generals checked their systems for malfunctions, and families blinked into the sunlight, wondering why death had changed its mind. Yet amidst the swirling uncertainty, a quiet group of researchers working in a subterranean lab beneath New York held their own suspicions. Deep below the surface, beneath a mountain of steel and silence, one woman sat in front of a flickering screen, reviewing data that no one else had access to. Dr. Kira Lin had been quiet for days. She didn't join the others in shouting or guessing. Instead, she listened to old recordings, examined forgotten files, and stared at a single face in an old, faded image. She remembered something the others didn't. Long before Veltrax became a name spoken in fear, before it carved its way into the nightmares of galaxies, there had been a project, small, secret, and buried in red tape. It had no flashy name, no powerful budget, just a cage, a child's voice, and a creature from the stars. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the screen. The image showed a much younger her, standing beside a small alien creature, barely the size of a large dog, its dark eyes wide and curious, its claws dull, its body trembling with innocence. She remembered its first steps, its first sounds, how it once slept curled beside a human technician. The creature had been afraid of the dark, afraid of loud noises, afraid of being alone. They had named it Eden. And then, one day, Eden had vanished. No alarms, no sign of escape. Just gone. The facility had been shut down, the project erased, until now. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke to the council, her face appearing on a secure channel that blinked to life without warning. "It didn't attack," she said, her words careful and slow. "Because it remembers." The others leaned in, confused, irritated. She didn't wait for questions. "Veltrax is Eden," she said. "It came home." And just like that, the storm of theories, accusations, and wild speculation shattered into silence. The words were impossible, unbelievable, and yet they fit perfectly. The timeline, the escape, the sudden rise of the predator. A monster raised not on instinct, but by the hands of humans, by kindness, by voices, by memory. If her words were true, then Earth had not been spared by luck or weaponry. It had been spared by something far more terrifying, a creature with a past. Years before Veltrax became a name that echoed through the dark corners of the galaxy, long before its shadow was cast over dying worlds, a quiet program had taken root on Earth, hidden from the eyes of the public, buried beneath bureaucracy and silence. It was called Project Echo, and it was designed not for war or profit, but for understanding. At the time, Earth had only just begun its first real steps into the interstellar community. Encounters with alien life had been rare, and even then, most species viewed humanity with indifference, suspicion, or quiet amusement. When the capsule crashed in the Amazon basin, far from cities and satellites, the world above didn't even notice. It was a small vessel, scarred, broken, and clearly ancient. Inside was no advanced weapon or strange machine. Inside was something far more delicate, a living creature, no taller than a human child, curled into a trembling ball, its breathing slow and shallow. The team that retrieved it, led by a young scientist named Kira Lin, was the first to witness it open its eyes. They had expected fear, resistance, maybe even violence. What they found instead was curiosity. The creature, though clearly alien, showed signs of high intelligence. It learned quickly. It mimicked sounds, expressions, movements. Its eyes followed every detail, its fingers reached for every tool, every screen. Despite its monstrous appearance, clawed hands, armored skin, spined back, it behaved like a child trying to understand a strange new world. Kira, who had always believed intelligence and emotion were universal languages, took a special interest in the being. She named it Eden. The name came to her in a moment of quiet awe as she watched it reach for the stars on a virtual display. Over time, Eden responded to that name with clear recognition. It began to draw shapes in the air, mimic voices, even hum back melodies played to it in the lab. It seemed to crave connection, affection even. Kira believed Eden was not just intelligent, but lonely, very lonely. The program was small. Only a dozen researchers knew of Eden's existence. And for months, it remained that way. Peaceful, quiet, filled with careful study and growing bonds. Eden learned to communicate with symbols, to respond to names, and even showed signs of emotional response, frustration, amusement, fear. But, as the weeks passed, strange patterns began to emerge. The creature grew, not just in size, but in behavior. Its body began to change rapidly, muscles thickening, claws sharpening, skin darkening. It became restless at night, pacing its chamber, staring long into the surveillance cameras as if trying to remember something hidden in the wires. It began to mimic sounds of distress, cries it had heard from movies, from recordings, from other research rooms. And then came the dreams. It would sleep, then wake with sudden force, tearing through restraints, releasing sounds that no one could understand, sounds filled with longing and loss, like echoes of a voice calling out across galaxies. The project. Leaders grew nervous. Some wanted to sedate Eden permanently. Others argued it should be transferred to a containment facility. But Kira refused. She believed the changes were natural, a process of development for a species they simply didn't understand. She begged them to wait, to give Eden space and time. For a while they listened, but then, one morning, Eden was gone. The chamber was empty. The security footage was corrupted. No breach alarms had sounded. It had vanished without a trace. The facility panicked. Investigations were launched. Blame was thrown around like fire. But nothing ever turned up. No body, no crash site, no signal. The project was quietly shut down, files sealed, and Eden's name erased from every terminal. The researchers were reassigned. Kira was silenced. And the past was buried until the beast known as Veltrax appeared on the edge of the galaxy. Now, standing in the aftermath of its quiet arrival and sudden retreat, that buried past returned like a ghost. Kira's revelation to the Council shook everything they thought they knew. Veltrax was not some wild force of nature. It was Eden. And Eden had not forgotten. The eyes that had once blinked in wonder at glowing stars had now seen the worst the Lao Galaxy had to offer: war, death, fear. Somewhere in the darkness, Eden had become Veltrax. The transformation was complete, but the memory remained. And Earth. Earth was still home. That explained the hesitation. That explained the silence. The galaxy called Veltrax a monster, but Earth had once called it a child. Back in her private quarters, Kira watched the footage over and over again. The towering beast descending through Earth's skies, the way it walked into the forest and paused. She saw the moment its gaze turned toward the old lab site, now covered by trees. There was no rage in those eyes, no hunger, just a deep, haunting recognition. She whispered the name again. Eden. And for the first time in years, her voice didn't tremble with fear, but something else. Hope, perhaps, or guilt. Or maybe both. The past had returned not with destruction, but with a question. A silent one. A creature who remembered kindness in a world that expected monsters. The skies over planet Durox 9 burned red as the last of the outposts fell silent. Communications had been severed, satellites reduced to drifting ash, and entire cities swallowed by shadows that never roared, never spoke, only watched. What terrified the galactic fleets most wasn't just the destruction, but the silence that came before it. Veltrax didn't conquer with armies. It didn't announce itself with war drums or warnings. It simply arrived, stood tall under strange stars, and turned its gaze toward whatever world had invited its attention. And when it moved on, nothing remained but twisted metal and cold wind. Yet as the military leaders of the Galactic Union screamed for retaliation, and as fleets formed around the fragile rim of nearby colonies, the creature did something no one expected. It stopped. Right before reaching the outer Terran colonies, Veltrax ceased its march and hovered motionless at the edge of human territory. For hours, it did nothing. No heat signatures, no energy spikes, no threats, just stillness. Then, without warning, it transmitted a signal, encoded in a language long thought extinct. Ancient human code. The file reached only one person. Kira. Lynn. Deep within a secured bunker beneath old Earth's surface, she watched the signal unfold on her screen. her heart pounding with each symbol that formed. It wasn't a message of war. It was a warning. The data unfolded like a dream, images, fragments, memories from Eden's mind. Kira saw a galaxy burning, alien species twisted by their own violence, entire worlds ruled by fear. Somewhere in those memories, Eden had found others like it, not of its own kind, but predators of the void, creatures ancient and powerful, hunting not for survival, but for dominance. Veltrax had fought them, had torn through their realms, had learned from them, and now it had returned not to destroy Earth, but to protect it. Because something worse was coming, something older than Veltrax, something that didn't fear humanity, but hungered for it. The signals showed flashes of impossible shapes, shadows that wore the skins of planets, voices that could shatter thought. They were called the Voidkin, and they had awoken from slumber at the edge of the known universe. Eden had seen them, fought them, and barely survived. It had followed their scent back toward the center of the galaxy, back toward Earth, to warn the only beings that had once shown it kindness. Kira sat frozen as the final image settled on the screen. Eden standing alone beneath a shattered moon, its body torn, its armor fractured, yet its eyes still searching. That moment sealed her resolve. She rushed through secure corridors, stormed into the council chambers, and demanded they listen. But the council, old and arrogant, dismissed her with tired words. They called Veltrax a manipulator, a trickster beast trying to sow confusion. They wanted to strike it down before it grew stronger. Only one voice, Admiral Hessian of the Terran fleet, stood in her defense. He had seen the way. Veltrax spared human colonies. He had watched the scans, tracked the pattern. It wasn't random. Veltrax avoided Earth's kind like a guardian avoiding the kin it must not harm. And now it reached out, not to beg, not to threaten, but to warn. If they ignored it, Earth would not only lose its strange protector, but its only chance at survival. Together, Kira and Hashan returned the signal, embedding within it a simple phrase: "We remember." Hours passed. The skies remained empty. Then, without sound or spectacle, Veltrax moved. Not toward Earth, not toward the stars, but toward the black, toward the void where the galactic maps ended and fear began. It flew with purpose, its great limbs glowing with strange light, its wings carving through time itself. It left behind no trail, no words, only the haunting silence of something ancient preparing for war. But just before it vanished, every Terran, screen flickered. For a breath of a second, every eye on Earth saw it. A shape, dark and massive, hidden behind Veltrax. Something shifting, larger than planets, watching. Then it disappeared. Panic gripped the council. Suddenly, the warning felt too real. Probes were launched, fleets scrambled. But it was too late. The Voidkin had already begun to move. Whispers of stars going dark spread like wildfire. The galaxy, once arrogant and full of pride, now looked to the race it had once mocked, the humans, for answers. And behind them, watching from the edge of night, stood Veltrax. No longer just a monster, no longer just a myth, but a soldier, a guardian, a creature born of pain, raised in kindness, and shaped by fire. And it had made a vow in silence. Whatever the Voidkin brought with them, they would never reach the ones who had once named it Eden. Darkness fell upon the galaxy not with screams, but with silence. One by one, stars vanished from the outer rims, swallowed whole by invisible hands that tore space like cloth. Ships sent to investigate returned either broken or never at all. On the edge of Terran space, the once proud fleets of 1,000 species huddled together like frightened children beneath a storm. The Voidkin had arrived. Their presence warped reality, twisted time, and shattered all known science. massive. Forms crawled through starlight, speaking in voices not heard but felt, digging into minds with questions that burned. Yet, in the middle of it all, between humanity and the approaching storm, stood Eden. No longer hidden in myth, no longer the shadow in nightmares, but now a towering sentinel ablaze with purpose. Its body glowed with the strange energy stolen from long-dead gods, its wings outstretched, shielding the stars behind it like a guardian of old legends. Every ship's sensors screamed in confusion. Eden was no longer a creature, it was a force. Something greater than the sum of bone, metal, and memory. Something reborn. The Voidkin surged forward, a tide of crawling silence, hungry to consume all that stood in their path. And Eden met them. Alone. Without allies. Without backup. It moved with precision, tearing into the darkness, claws igniting, in bursts of impossible color, its roars vibrating through the very fabric of the galaxy. The first clash shattered a moon. The second tore a wormhole in half. But Eden did not retreat. It danced through destruction like a creature born for chaos, holding the line between life and annihilation. On Earth, scientists wept at the data, pouring in, readings that defied every law, patterns that felt more like emotion than code. And among them, Kira Lynn watched in silence, heart tight, eyes filled with a mix of fear and awe. It wasn't just fighting, it was choosing. Choosing to protect. For days, the battle raged across a stretch of space once known as the Dead Spiral. Light fled the region, sensors failed, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Nothing survived within that battleground. No ship, no probe, no stray asteroid. Only Eden. And when at last the Voidkin recoiled, wounded and confused, they did not understand what had happened. Never before had a creature resisted so fiercely, fought so purposefully without fear or anger, but with loyalty, with memory. Eden had become something they could not consume. It was not flesh. It was not machine. It was bond. Somewhere in its heart burned the echo of a campfire on an alien world, the sound of a human voice speaking not to command, but to comfort. That memory had anchored it, given shape to its will, and forged a resolve no void could unravel. The Voidkin fled, not defeated, but denied. Their hunger, boundless and ancient, found no purchase in the one who stood between them and Earth. And so they vanished, deeper into the unknown, to wait and grow stronger once more. In the silence that followed, Eden returned, scarred, broken in places, but alive. It did not speak, did not land, did not ask for thanks. It only circled the Terran system once, its shadow stretching across Earth like a silent promise. Then it vanished into the stars, leaving behind a single beacon. On it, etched in pure energy, was a message in a language older than words. Remember kindness. It changes the course of stars. The council fell quiet for the first time in living memory. No one spoke of war. No one argued for conquest. Even the most stubborn species bowed their heads. Something had changed. The galaxy had witnessed a force greater than fear, stronger than weapons. Not in the form of a fleet or a bomb, but in the silent vow of a single being who had once been called a monster. Years passed. The scars of the Voidkin faded into legend. Children grew up hearing tales of Eden the Protector, the beast who stood alone against the end. Statues rose, stories spread, but among those who truly remembered, only one woman still waited. Kira Lynn, now aged and retired, often stared at the stars from her quiet home near the old launch sites of Earth. And sometimes, when the sky was clear and the world felt still, a streak of silver could be seen across the black, moving fast, silent, and watching. And she would smile, knowing it was still there. Somewhere out in the deep, The galaxy's deadliest predator watched over the fragile light of humanity. Not because it was commanded, not because it owed anything, but because once, long ago, someone had shown it kindness, and from that kindness, a guardian had been born.